How are you doing?
Hey, Rich. I'm doing amazing. How are you?
Awesome. Good. That's good. It's getting to the end of August. I got my two oldest kids that are off to college, so the house is a little quieter. Get some more work done during the day. It's been good.
Yeah, work has been heating up for us, so.
It has. We'll talk about that for sure. So yes, we'll give
Hmm.
people a few minutes to get joined in. One of the things I question for you. I don't think it's a topic we
Mm.
have. We'll certainly can answer, but like I know there was a hurricane that kind of went up the Atlantic coast, stayed out in the ocean. Did you guys notice anything from that last week?
No, barely anything. The only thing that
Yeah.
really happened were all the surfers were stoked because the waves were pretty darn good. So
Oh, awesome.
they were all just every day just out there ripping it, and it's fun to
Yeah.
watch them surf. I haven't surfed since I was in high school, but yeah, so they were happy, but we didn't even really get much rain.
Really?
Just some good waves, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, if people have questions about that later, we can certainly touch on kind of the impacts each of our areas have in in that
Yeah.
regard. But yeah, it's always seems to be a topic this time of year, especially as we're entering
Everyone
into the
always
end of
wonders.
the hurricane season. Yep.
Yep, they're
Yeah,
always
for
wondering
sure.
about the hurricane. So, as we know, Rich, today's topic, we're going all in on West Coast and East Coast of Florida, our market, what's happening here in regards to real estate and short-term rentals. So, and markets vary, they're so different from city to city. And I really want to know, what are you seeing on the Florida Sun Coast? So I know you're in like the Bradenton, Seminole area. What are you seeing as far as housing prices and inventory?
Yeah, it is a good question. It is. It's a topic that's definitely relevant. As I speak with potential clients and investors, that question comes up a lot. And as well as like there's different news articles out there that are pushing the headlines of like, the Florida market is crashing and, they'll throw out different statistics and graphs and charts. And not to say that it's wrong, but like most things, it's like specific to a very small area and not the general
Hmm.
consensus. So, while there are certainly different cities or markets in Florida that may be seeing an excess of supply and prices dropping, in my area specifically, that's definitely not the case. I'll give you an example. Just like probably the last six deals, six properties that I've gotten under contract with my clients, and then even some that we did not, they've all had multiple offers on those. Only
Wow.
one of them has been over asking. The rest of them are, a little bit under asking, but there are competitive offers. So it's not just a buyer's market per se. Um,
Hmm.
Even had one over this past weekend where it hit the market on Thursday, and then they had a call for best and finals on Saturday by noon. They had a total of six offers, and they ended up going under contract for almost 50,000 over asking.
Wow.
Part of it was the listing agent wasn't sure what she had. She called me and she's like, "Rich, what am I missing? Why are there so many offers? And why is it going over asking?" She was actually going to price it like 50,000 less, and at the last minute decided to bump it up
Mhm.
$50,000, and it went 50,000 over that. Um, and
Wow.
so it was one of those things like, she didn't necessarily know the short-term rental market and the demand.
Hmm.
And so she was pricing it just based on an HOA community right next door that doesn't allow short-term rentals, and didn't recognize the demand for a property like that. So all that to say, properties that are a good fit for us that are priced right are moving quickly. If something's overpriced, we'll wait for it to drop and see if the sellers are motivated. And sometimes that is an opportunity to get in, and you can start that negotiation. But it's definitely not a place where you can come and expect to get huge discounts.
Mm.
It is fairly competitive. What about you? How is it going up in the Northeast coast?
It's going really good. A little bit different here. So East Coast has been growing. I'm specifically like, Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Palm Coast, Daytona, that area. And it's been growing. There's a lot of investors bringing in really big projects here. And it's just a great place to live in general. So, not only is there demand for short term rentals, as the regulations are very favorable here, there's very few areas that you can't do short term rentals. And so with the growth of people just wanting to live here, people moving here for work, and all of that, it's definitely been a good market. I'm going to talk kind of in general terms, the real estate market. People were there for a while still pricing the homes like it was 2021, right, where they're seeing extremely inflated prices because the demand was so high post COVID.
Right.
They were still pricing it high there for a little bit, but now they've started to really come down to a more normal level. But prices overall have been generally still increasing, so the values are still holding strong. But they're not, the crazy prices that we were seeing, right around
Yeah.
that post-COVID time. Inventory is still tight. There's a lot of properties that are for sale that'll just sit because they're just not good properties,
Hmm.
as far as for short-term rental. But the ones that are good, they get sold. So there's two ways to go in my market. Number one is to buy an existing short-term rental, and those are always going to be priced at a premium, especially if they're performing well, when it comes to the revenue. It's hard to find those, and when they go quick, and there's usually multiple offers. Now, a lot of times the deals I'm doing are properties that were not previously short-term rentals, and they were a primary home. And so we're able to, get some concessions. Sellers have a lot of equity here. So we are able to, get some seller credits, get some concessions, especially if they've been sitting and they're ready to sell it. Definitely can get some deals. So I would say we are in a buyer's market, but I know that like it just in the last month, ever since the big beautiful bill got passed, it's been crazy. Stuff has been going under
Hmm.
contract so quickly. And we have a lot of aged inventory here as well. So hi Tyler, just saw you pop in there. You guys feel free to drop in the chat. Would love to know where you're from, and if you guys have questions, put that in the chat. But so here, properties were built long, long, long time ago, and so you've got these properties that are old, that need ton of reno. So we've been doing a lot of like forced equity type of deals, value add deals, where we
Hmm.
are buying them, renovating them, and then we're refinancing them, and then we're short term renting them. So that's been really successful here, especially for like the beachfront properties. Those are built, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they need to just be completely overhauled. So doing a lot of those kind of deals right now, and those we get at a really nice discount because they're old and they need $300,000 worth of work, but the numbers still make a lot of sense, from a adding value and repositioning and getting cash out, and also from a short-term rental revenue getting like a 15% plus cash on cash return. So the
Yeah.
market here, I'm every day I'm scouring the market, like where are the properties, and I'm trying to get in and preview them, and okay, this is going to work for this because it has a big lot, and I can add amenities, and so yeah, it's been really good here, busy. But if it's not a good property for short-term rental, it's probably going to sit.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's pretty similar here. We don't have an abundance of supply of like good properties. And similar to what it sounds like in your area, we are primarily a first home residential market where people live here, work here, go to school here. And it just happens to be
Mhm.
a good investor market because Anna Maria Island is 10 minutes away and it's a beautiful beach and a lot of demand. Um,
Yeah, so pretty there.
and
Oh my
so,
goodness.
yeah, yeah. So it can be challenging. And, um, yeah, in a similar way, like, we're not looking at like these huge inventory of homes that are just available and perfect for short-term rentals, right? When I go through my saved list, I do the same thing. Every morning I'm getting on, checking price drops, checking new listings. I'll check my saved listings and see where they're at. And honestly, like anything that I save typically is under contract within a week, right? If I go back to my
Mhm.
list and go back, like there's nothing that's been on the market for 30 days that I've marked that would be a good short-term rental. They go under contract fairly quickly. So not to scare
Right.
anyone off, it's more of be prepared, because we want to be ready as soon as something comes available, of moving quickly and kind of being that first one in, um, and
Yeah.
and working quickly. So we talked a little bit about kind of the housing market and like what prices are looking like and inventory in your area. What about like the Airbnb or the short-term rental market? How are you seeing overall occupancy changing, or is it changing as well as like ADRs and your nightly rates?
We've seen a little bit of compression in rates, 5 to 10% year over year. And it's because I think we were kind of in a weird space, with the economy for a little bit there. And, some months were just blow it out of the water crazy, but then other months were just oddly quiet. This year, like our April wasn't as crazy as it normally is. And so, it's been a little bit of a unique year, but occupancy is very, very strong still. In general, in the areas where it's ideal for short-term rental, which for me are going to be, by the coast, you're going to be, like in the Ponte Vedra Beach area, the Volano Beach area, Jack's Beach, downtown St. Augustine Beach, Flagler Beach. Those areas, you typically have a 70, 75% occupancy. Some homes go higher, but the bigger homes typically, because those are groups traveling, you're like around 70. The smaller the property gets, you can have a lot higher
Mhm.
occupancy. But the rates have been slightly compressed. However, if it's a standout property, if it's a top 1% property, if it's an ideal short-term rental that has top-notch amenities and design and location, those properties are still extremely strong. So the cream rises to the top, right? That's really what's happening
Yeah.
here. And so I've seen, some of our properties that we've refreshed and rebranded and gone in and been like, what, this needs a total makeover and a facelift. Those properties have outperformed other properties by 30 to 40%. So it's definitely, you got to be strategic with it here because there is more competition, but there's not a lot of really good, strong competition, right? I think
Okay.
everybody's seeing that in their market. Lead times are shorter, so it's typically 50% of bookings right now are coming within 10 days, unless it's peak weeks, holiday weeks, those are getting booked way in advance. We have the TPC PGA Tour that happens here at
Mhm.
Sawgrass, so I just booked a 4-bedroom townhome that we have, and that was $1,600 a night for 7 days. So, I mean, those peak weeks just go and they're at a premium. But
Right.
yeah, so that's really my takeaway. What are you seeing down there on the Sun Coast?
Yeah, we're continuing to see I think, a very healthy short-term rental market. If we look at homes that are good performers, and even the market as a whole, ADRs are going up 3 to 5 to 6%. Occupancy is going up 1 to 2%. Um, RevPAR, kind of all of our metrics are ticking up what you would consider just a healthy rate. It hasn't seen a huge jump like we did like post-COVID. Now we're kind of back to that normal of 3, 4, 5% increases year over year. But even looking at post-COVID numbers, our demand and number of rental nights and bookings are probably double of even what it was coming out of COVID. So we haven't gone down since COVID. We've continued to rise up. I think part of that does come back to the number of available properties, and I think that's an important thing for investors too to think about, because we always want to think about market saturation and oversaturation and demand and all of those key things if you're looking to invest. And Bradenton has been on too many lists in the last couple of years about best places to
Mm,
invest for Airbnbs. I had my own little secret down here for a few years, but the word is out. So now there's more
it
people
is.
here. But so the number of properties has increased and has steadily gone up. We've kind of peaked out and leveled out. So we'll see some drop off and new ones come on. But what is a great metric is that the demand follows the supply. We are
Mm,
essentially like when we are in our super peak month of March, which is all the family spring breaks, our market will be about 98% booked across all property types. You can
us
have the worst
too.
property on the market and be
Yeah.
really booked for March, right? So the demand is there, which is good. We haven't seen any kind of compression or demand outpacing, or I guess supply outpacing demand. So it
Mhm.
is healthy numbers to look at right now.
Yeah, I would say in my market, the 3 bedrooms are pretty saturated. Do you see that down there?
Well, I'd say like the 3 bedrooms, there's more 3 bedrooms than any other bedroom count. What I
Mhm.
like to think about is kind of like the type of property, like well done properties are not saturated. And so,
Mm.
one thing that I've noticed over the last year compared to maybe the same time last year is that there are many more, I'll call them professionally done Airbnbs or short-term rentals on the market for rent. And so what that's done is it's kind of pushed out those people at the bottom that had just the plain home, no amenities, normal furniture, normal design, couldn't tell if it was a short-term rental or someone lived there or was renting it out on an annual basis. So they've kind of got forced out the bottom of the market. And those properties that are coming in are doing well. So most of those new investors are coming in at that 4 and 5 bedroom count. And there's in my opinion, a great opportunity in that 3 bedroom space to get a good property at a much less value and purchase price, but still do the very nice design. We'll call it the professional design. Every home has to have a pool here, otherwise we'll pass unless you want to put
You
in a
gotta have
pool.
a pool. Same
You
here.
got to
You
have a
gotta have a
pool.
pool.
But yeah, but creating that outdoor space, like not every group that comes here has 15 or 18 people. There's groups that come down 4, 6, 8 individual families, maybe 2 small families, and they still want to have that nice experience and they're willing to pay for it. So it doesn't have to only be the 4, 5, 6 bedroom homes that you kind of do this elevated experience. So there's a huge opportunity in that 3 bedroom space for people to
Mm,
come in and do those elevated and really nice stays.
great. That's good to know. Okay. All right. So if someone comes to you and they're complaining about their bookings being slow, what numbers are they not looking at that maybe they should be, or what do they need to evaluate?
Yeah, this is a very relevant question for this time period we're in. You're probably in a similar
Mm,
situation where the official start of our slow season was last week. Kids are back in school, less families are traveling, so now we're getting more just like long weekend stays. So if we can get those 3 night stays, and so the end of August and September is our lowest performing month. We'll still be 50, 55, 60% occupied, but the rates are going to be, you know, they'll be double with what they are now when we talk about March. So a lot of times what I see is people that are newer and just not understanding the difference between the summer rates even and then what it looks like when you get into the end of August and September. And they're still maybe drop their rates by 5 or 10%, when honestly, like a home that I was booking for $1,200 a night in July is now like 450 a night. And that's fine. That's good.
hmm
Because like we're not making our money in September. We're just going to be covering our bills and expenses, getting us through to Thanksgiving, where we start that rocket
Yep.
ship again of getting those good numbers. How about for you?
Yeah, I think my market has the same kind of booking trends. Um, as far as when it's the rainy season, after the kids go back to school after Labor Day, before
Yep.
holiday, that is the three lowest months. So I think whenever someone comes to me and they are saying, hey, my bookings are slow. What can I do? There are a lot of things that I look at, and the biggest one is the overall marketing of the property. How does the
Hmm.
listing present, and how is the product itself? Like, how, is this a product that I would actually want to pay for? Um, and analyzing, what are the comps doing that this property is not doing, so really going in, pulling. I have, obviously we have the upgraded version of AirDNA, so like going in and really looking at the granular details of each comp and seeing, okay, what do these properties have that I don't have, and honestly looking at what are their booking trends, what's their
Yeah.
occupancy, what's their average daily rate, because maybe sometimes you're doing all the right things and you are one of the top comps, right? And so then maybe it could be algorithm focused. There could be little things that you can do with the listing and how you present that, as far as your hero photos, your top five, your titles, your SEO. Maybe you've gotten a poor review that kind of bumped you down in the algorithm recently. That has happened to me on some of my properties, which really stinks. But how, number one, how do you compare? Right. And how do
Yeah.
you really stack up? And then if you don't compare, if you don't stack up to those properties that are really doing the best, then what do I need to do? Do I need to add a coffee bar? Do I need to make pet friendly? Do I need to fence in the property so that when I make it pet friendly, it's really ideal for pets? Do I change and add some color? I think one of the biggest things I see is I'm in a very traditional drive to old school vacation market. I mean, people have vacation. So, for example, St.
Mm.
Augustine since like the 1800s when Henry Flagler built it, right? So I've seen people doing just vacation rentals that just have no color and it's just like grays and whites because they're going for that coastal look. And for me, I'm like, gosh, you just need some color. Like this property needs to pop off the page. So like that, you can do that with really just throw pillows and throw blankets and some decor on the wall and some pop of curtains. You know, you can do that really inexpensively. Um, so that's typically what I'll do. I just really kind of do a whole listing optimization, analyzing comps, you know, really trying to deep dive on how can we set this property up to position it well. One of the properties, for example, that we're actually selling right now, but when she came to me, she had a 4 bedroom, 3 bath pool home that was not in an ideal area. It was like it really in a residential area. It was not built for short term rental. She didn't buy it for short term rental. When she came to me, she was making like 25K on that property a year. And I said, okay, you know what? She was a big, huge animal lover. And I was like, we're going to position this as a top pet friendly destination. We went in, we totally redecorated, we staged everything for pets, right? We did the pets that could go in the pool. We did the dog bone float in the pool. We did the dog beds, the dog treats, the blankets, like all the things, toys, all
Hmm.
the things that people with pets would want. And we really made it, we called it the possum retreat with like PAW paw. And she was performing over $73,000 a year in gross revenue.
It's awesome.
So that literally tripled her revenue just because we went in. I mean, we didn't change anything else really. We moved some furniture around and did
Yeah.
some great photos, but we really just made it. We said, you know what, you can bring any type of dog, any breed. They could swim in the pool, and it tripled our income. You know, nobody was doing
Yeah.
that.
Really
So
niching
that,
down, getting niching down
yeah, exactly.
for sure.
Yep.
That's great. And yeah, and I think it's important that owners or managers or kind of where if whether you're managing yourself or not, be very honest about your own property as you're looking at your comparables, right? And it's like we all like to think that our property's the best and it should be getting more or higher rates than the one across the street or the similar property. But being honest with that is super important. That way you can price and strategic your pricing accordingly. Because if they have just maybe a little bit better of attractive design but all the same amenities, now make it hard for that guest to pick the other property. Maybe just come in, $20 less a night. Maybe it's $60, but they have to make that decision. Do I want to pay an extra $60 because they have some cool wallpaper? So just being
Yeah.
honest. And if you do have those extra amenities of maybe a hot tub and someone else doesn't, you know, go ahead and price just a little bit above because you are providing more value. So I think being honest with yourself and with the property and pricing it
Hmm.
accordingly is definitely important. So
For sure.
you kind of touched on, it's a hot market for as far as like a lot of buyers right now, especially with the big beautiful bill. There's a lot of incentives for individual investors like ourselves to be making purchases in short-term rentals. But we have a lot of people that are still doing this for the first time, getting in as first-time investors, especially in short-term rentals. So if you have an investor that's nervous about buying today, like what information would you share with them to give them that confidence that they need to move forward?
Well, I really look at working with my clients personally from a holistic perspective. And what I mean is looking at their whole life and what are they trying to get out of it? And like a question I'd
Hmm.
pose to them would be like, okay, let's look a year from now and you've bought this property and you're up and running. You know, what is your ideal results that you're seeking to get from this journey? You know, why are you doing this? Like, what do you really want to get out of it? Like, let's tie, an actual result to the end of this process because a lot of people come and they want to invest, but they're not always clear on what they want to get out of it. So I love helping them get clear on that. And thinking about their big picture of their life, you know, what are their short-term goals or long-term goals, and then really kind of being strategic about how I can help them build a plan that helps them build wealth through real estate. And we do that by starting to invest in their first property. So I'm consultative, and I'm understanding really what their situation is. And then really delivering them data, but it's not just data, showing them data, showing them performas, showing them comps, showing them, the whole process high level. I do that, but there's also a lot of imagination and vision that goes into helping my clients create what they want, because again, most of the properties that we buy are not pre-existing short-term rentals. We have to
Right.
really go in and set them up, at least the good deals, right? That's where you get the good price. So we have to really be creative. And I've got an incredible team here of people, contractors, designers, all those people. And it's like, hey, like, come walk through this property with me. Like, what do you see here? Okay, now what is it actually going to cost? Like, let's define a scope of work, and let's really get to what is this actually going to cost us, and then how quickly can we get it done, because the timeline is so critical. All those little
Hmm.
things, factor into how much it's going to cost you and how much they're going to make, which is a big part of it. But it's not all about the money. Some of it's like the headache. Some of it's like just the time and energy. Some people don't want that. They want turnkey, right? And so knowing that, like, I'm not going to bring someone a full renovation project if they're super busy and they don't have space to take on anything else. So it's like, okay, let's find you something that's turnkey. So really understanding the client, what they want to get out of it, and then helping them be creative about what type of project we're gonna look for and that we're gonna take on. That's really how I approach it. And then I give them my confidence. I think people need confidence. They want to know that who they're working with believes in what they're doing and will help support them and guide them. I just had one of my clients call yesterday. They're like, they were kind of freaking out because they're like, oh my gosh, Nikki, we just found termites. And we checked for termites. We had a WDO. We did all that before, right? But sometimes in real estate, stuff happens. And so, it's like, okay, calm down. Let's breathe. I'm going to get my people there. We're going to get this solved. We're going to work through it together. Like, it's a very emotional,
Hmm.
and sometimes volatile process of going through this, this journey of buying property. So having someone that can, you know, almost be like your therapist too along the way.
Yeah.
That's how I do it. What
Yeah.
about you?
You touched
What's
on,
your
yeah.
strategy?
Well, yeah, you touched on something I think is very important, and you talked about like the confidence, right? And I think part of your job is to give your clients that confidence. Part of my job is to let them rely on my confidence in the market or on a property. And if I think back to, you know, when we got our first short-term rental, it was really like it was coming out of COVID. The house next door to us was for sale. I'll be honest, it was like 300, and I think we bought it for 375,000. My wife was like, "Hey, I've always wanted to do." My wife loved hospitality. She always wanted to host people and put, chocolates on their
Right.
pillows, etc. So she's like, "We should buy this house next door and run it as an Airbnb." I'm like, "Well, if you can find a friend that wants
Mm,
to do it with you, then that would help. That'd give me more confidence that we have someone else we're doing it with." And so she got one of her friends. They decorated it and then said, "Hey, Rich, we're done decorating it. We don't want to do the day-to-day stuff. Can you take it over?" So I did. So that was the entrance. And then as we looked at buying, it's nerve-wracking because they
mm,
are big investments, right? And so when you're going to make that decision, it can take a lot of time. You want a lot of data, you want a lot of information. But as you get into it, like anything, when your confidence increases, your time to make decisions is so much quicker. We
mm,
closed on our third property 2 weeks ago. It was a property ended up going to auction. I did put it in front of my VIP clients before I bought it, but
mm,
I saw it hit the market. I went and walked through it the first day, took video, and you know got it under contract a few days later because I saw it and I knew like this is it. Like I don't need a whole lot of information to know that this is going to be a great property. So I think getting into it, um, if you haven't done it yourself, that's why it's important to work with someone like Nikki, like myself, like the Savvy team, because we do this every day in one fashion or another. And let that confidence kind of come from us. And that's part of our job. I take that seriously myself. And I'm sure everyone does of like, hey, if we're going to put our clients onto a property, that it really should be one that they can have confidence in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really won't push someone to get something that I wouldn't buy myself. And actually,
Yeah.
almost every deal that my clients buy, I'm like, man, if they don't buy this, I'm gonna buy it. Like,
Right.
because I want it to be that good of a deal, that
Yeah.
number one, they're getting, we're negotiating the best possible price and credits for them, and that the vision and the plan for the property is really there. By the way, the one that you just talked about, the one that you just closed on, is that the one that you posted those really cool plans of recently?
I did. Yes, I did. Last night
Yeah.
we had our kind of the first meeting with the architect to get the 3D layout. We've been talking in 2D dimensions and where we're going to put different things. So yeah, pretty excited about that. We'll have a lot of stuff going out and content. So you can follow my Facebook page, find me on Instagram. We haven't come up with a name for the property yet, so we'll get that set up. And yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. It's my biggest one. Um, my goal for it is to be one of the top three in the Bradenton market, which is a big deal. And so we'll see if
Yeah.
we can pull that off. Even like Dave Ramsey says, even if I'm half wrong, then we're still gonna be doing really well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, let's go into some like myths and misconceptions. I love these. I love
Cool.
myth
Yes.
busting. So, what is the biggest myth that you keep hearing from investors that really just isn't true?
Yeah, I think there's not one huge one that just like the aha. It's a bunch of little ones. It's insurance costs are out of control. The Florida market's crashing. We touched on that. Um,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not a myth, but maybe it's a myth in their mind of like coming to this market of buying that turnkey home that's like, well, I want to buy something that's already doing 20% ROI and has all the returns and financials. I just want to buy that one. Like, well, that's a myth, right? That property doesn't exist. If it did, every once in a while, there may be someone that is getting those returns and it's just they got a ton of equity. They're another project they want to move on to, but most of the time it's someone that didn't take the extra 2 steps to make it a successful property, but we see that it's
Yep.
got
That's.
all the
Hmm.
foundational footprint to make it really good. They just didn't take those steps. Um,
Hmm.
and then stepping back to the insurance, that's definitely one to clear up because that is a big line item when you're doing your underwriting, your pro forma is that insurance, and especially if it's gonna just keep creeping out of control. I will say, and I think this is where the myths come from, is that flood insurance rates are going up considerably. And that is my personal primary home. It's a newer home, so we're built up above the flood level, a couple blocks off of the Manatee River, which feeds into Tampa Bay. When we bought it a few years ago, I think we paid $1,200 a year annually for our flood insurance, and now we're at like 2,800 a year, so it's more than doubled. And we're not talking 10,000
Hmm.
a year, but it still has doubled.
Right.
Um, but all that to say, the majority of homes that we're looking at for investors, they're not on Anna Maria Island because those homes are in the millions of dollars. And while they are great lifestyle assets, investors aren't going to get those 18 to 20% returns. So we're looking in Bradenton proper, and
Hmm.
there's only very small coastline areas where we have to worry about flood insurance. And typically, we don't see being on the water bring back the amount of revenue that justifies paying that premium to be on the water. So very rarely do we even come across a property that's in a flood zone that requires flood insurance. And the normal
Hmm.
homeowners insurance is very very normal. I have a 5 bedroom home, 3,000 square feet, pool, pickleball court, and our annual premium for a short term rental policy that covers 2 night stays and up, we're at like $5,600 annually. Not to say everyone's will be that way. There's all things that consider and make up how that's priced, age of roof and other components. But I'd say it's very reasonable. It's not out of control. So those are the myths
Yeah.
that I kind of hear and that I typically have to dispel as I'm talking to people. How about you? What's going on
You
up?
know what? I really resonate with everything you just said about insurance. It's almost the same exact thing here. Now, I will say that most of the good deals are on the coast, right? Unless you're going into the historic areas like downtown St.
Yeah.
Augustine or the Riverside area of Jacksonville, like those types of areas. But there's properties that are not in flood zones that are, a couple houses back from the beach, right? It really depends on their
Awesome.
elevation. So,
Yep.
number one, a lot of times if it is in a flood zone, then that flood policy is transferable. So, like for example, I just did a deal. The house was one house back from the beach. It was a $1.7 million home, and it was $1,200 a year for the flood insurance, and that was transferred from the seller. So that's great, right? And then I'm doing another deal right now where same, just like you, it's across the street from the beach. This one's a 4 bedroom, and it does have a pool, does have a metal roof, so like the roof's pretty new and all of that, and it's a block home. It is the we got insurance through Steadily for short-term rentals for daily for 5,400 a year, and then the flood
Hmm.
was 1,200 on that as well. And I will say a lot of my clients choose to get flood even if they're not in a flood zone, because like I said, we have coastal areas that are not in a flood zone based on the elevation. So they'll
Right.
still get it though, just in case, just to have that peace of mind. 1,200 bucks a year, 1,000 bucks a year. They have that peace of mind. I would say the bigger issue is wind driven rain. If you do have storms and things. And I will say over here on the Atlantic coast, hurricanes are a problem in that you can get high winds, right? And my worst that I ever experienced was 2004. We had two hurricanes back to back, and we lost some shingles. I was right at the beach too. I grew up on Milano Beach, and we lost some shingles and had lots of debris. But that was really the worst of it for us. Lost power. But because we're on the Atlantic and the water is colder, we don't get like direct hits of storms. So that's a big myth about getting hit by hurricanes. Yes, get storms. Yes, sometimes we suffer damage. Yes, there are some areas that flood. Um, but for the most part, we're pretty good when it comes to how we fare storms. And the other thing is, just like people who grew up in snow or live around snow, I have really never spent much time in the snow. I'm totally a Florida girl, but I wouldn't know how to function. Like I wouldn't know what you
Right.
do in snow. I don't know how to drive. I don't know how you get rid of the snow. I mean, I think you put salt on it or something. But like same thing here. We are built for storms. We just the next day the businesses are open,
Yeah.
everything's back to normal. Like it's just, everybody bands together and helps clean up, and your
Yep.
neighbors picking up stuff out of your yard, and I mean that's just how we operate. And I'm sure people who are in snow, that they help each other, and they have a system, and they know what needs to be done to prepare. They know what needs to happen before, during, and after a snowstorm. Here we know the same thing that needs to happen when it comes to hurricanes or storms. And for the most part, because we're on that colder Atlantic coast, we don't really get terrible direct hits, right? We really get the outer
Yeah.
bands. So, I mean, I've grown up here my whole life, and I've never had anything devastating. But doesn't mean that something couldn't. Mother Nature is wild these days. So who
Yeah.
knows? Just pray,
Right.
just pray. But anywhere
Yeah.
you invest is going to be risky. You go,
Yeah.
you could have tornadoes or tsunamis. I mean, there's going to be some risk wherever. You can't control everything.
Right. So we've been talking a lot about like the housing market, some things to think about for those buyers and investors that are out there. We may have some people watching that maybe have already purchased their home. So let's talk about some practical things that may help that person that's already got their property stood up and ready to go, or even for those investors that are looking to, they can take those tips as well. But let's talk about reviews. You touched on it. You said, a bad review can kind of hurt your performance, drop you down in the algorithm. But what are some small, easy things that you do? Because you are a host, you have a management business as well. So, what are some
Hmm.
small, easy things that you do to ensure that that 4-star review turns into a 5-star review, or ensures that you get more of those 5-star reviews than the latter?
Yeah. Reviews they take a lot of energy, and they are probably one of the biggest challenges, I would say, in large scale portfolios. I mean,
Yeah.
any portfolio, one property. Um, and what I do every week is on Tuesdays, we analyze all the reviews that have come in since the prior Tuesday, and we actually will create a spreadsheet. We'll look at how many 5-star, how many below 5-star. what positive feedback came in, what constructive feedback came in, and what negative feedback came in. And then we will actually create tickets based on all of that feedback. And so let's say that someone said, oh, the door handle was loose. I will create a ticket. We actually use Breezeway. I love Breezeway for tracking all this little stuff that can fall through the cracks. Just create a ticket, assign it to the handyman to be able to go out and fix that doorknob, right? It's not really a high priority thing, but we want to put it on the list and get it done. And then we also rank
Yep.
it by priority, right? Like what needs to be done first. If it's a leak or something is on fire, or, that kind of stuff, obviously that's high priority. But
Sure.
the little stuff, you don't want that kind of little stuff to fall through the cracks. There's a lot of small moving parts to this business, and you got to have systems to track the little details. So that's what I do is looking at all the reviews that came in and then really looking at what is the feedback. And if there's coaching that needs to be done to the cleaning team, then we'll know that from the reviews, and we'll have documentation, and we'll be able to go and talk to the cleaning team and make sure that we have a plan for moving forward. You do have guests sometimes that just say things that are just like, what are you talking about? Like it just doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
Maybe they're embellishing, or maybe they're just not being truthful sometimes. And so we actually have a system now for tracking. So we keep a spreadsheet of all the reviews that are less than 5-star. And, you know, Airbnb is probably the most difficult one, because that's where I would say people have learned to kind of work the system.
Hmm.
And we actually go back and we will go back to the guest, physically call them and ask them if they will change the review or delete the review. We've just really started this in the last few weeks. It's been pretty successful. We have gotten reviews removed. We have gotten reviews changed. I've offered them a future stay credit for a future stay, and it kind of depends on what their review said. Now, in the when we're even talking with the guests and we're like, oh, we know this person's going to be a problem, right? Like
Hmm.
we already know that they're going for the jugular, right? Like they're gonna come after us on the review, and if they threaten us, we report them immediately. We
Yes. I'm
report them
always
to
like, please,
Airbnb.
please, please threaten me with a bad review.
I'm like, yeah, go ahead. So if they threaten, we immediately report them, because that's against
Yep.
Airbnb's policies. Um, and I mean, if they even hint at it, we're reporting it to Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
So, because again, there's whole TikToks and things out there of teaching people how to
Oh
work the
yeah.
system, right? So, that's unfortunate. That's not the majority of guests. I don't want to deter anyone to think like, oh my
Sure.
gosh, I shouldn't do this. But there are a percentage of people that will do that. And so you just have to be prepared. And so we really we take the reviews so seriously, but I also take it with a grain of salt, because I go back and I research. If someone says, oh, you didn't get back to me, which I know that is like so rare that we ever miss getting
Hmm.
back to someone, right? It has happened. I'm not going to say we're
Sure.
perfect. It has happened, but I know that it is extremely rare, and I can go back and I'm reviewing all the documentation. We keep all the messaging in the platforms. We don't, if they call us, we recap it on the platform.
Yep.
Like we make sure all the documentation's there, because we want to know for future if we have to reference back, but we also want to be able to have a case built if we need to do something with that review. So, but things that make people happy are clean properties, clean, well kept properties, well maintained properties. Curb appeal. The first thing they see is when they come up is that outside of the property. And if you don't have good directions, or it's hard to get to, or they struggle with getting into the lock, or any of those things when they're first arriving, or the home has a weird smell, or like it just looks not clean because it's old and it's not been really maintained well. All of those things, I've had to get rid of properties out of the portfolio that just weren't a good fit, because they just were too dated and it didn't make sense to do the renovations. So all those things, that initial impression, if someone finds something, wrong as soon as they get there, you can bet they're going to continue looking for more things. So it's got to be a strong start and good communication, clear directions, easy access, a clean property. It smells good. But I also just like leaving things that people need, like little water bottles, coffee setup, little snacks, just little things that don't cost a lot.
Hmm.
So that people can, just have like that little touch of like, oh, they actually care. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. So pro tip, here's from my experience, and I'm sure Nikki's experienced it as well. So pro tip, write it down. Whoever calls Airbnb first is the winner. So if you get word or have any suspicion that your guest is causing problems, call Airbnb. If you have your minute noise sensor and it's going off and they've exceeded noise levels, call Airbnb. If your neighbor calls first and reports your property, they will do an investigation and essentially like unlist you while they do their investigation until they know that you didn't approve of a party. But if you call and say, hey, my guest has exceeded the noise limits, I've tried to reach out to them, they've not responded, could you please reach out to them on my behalf, and then the neighbor calls, they'll be like, yes, we're aware of this, the owner's aware of it, we are taking care of it, because now they know that you didn't authorize that. So in general, the person who calls Airbnb first wins, even when it comes up with guest issues.
True.
um yeah, so thought I'd share that just real practical tip that that can help. And so
For sure.
talk talked about a little bit. Let's talk about like now is a good time of the year where I'm talking with my clients and homeowners for people that I manage for, as well as our own properties of like, okay, what are some upgrades that we can do now that we're in our slow season to get ready for the next peak season? And sometimes that's going to just be like touching up the paint and stuff like that. But if someone doesn't have a big budget to like, okay, go build a pickleball court or to go put in this another $15,000-$20,000 amenity, what are some practical things that you've seen that someone could do with maybe, let's say we got just a couple $1,000, but they want to have a big impact? Any practical tips that someone could take to just improve?
Yeah, definitely. String lights add a lot, and then reshooting the area that you do string lights on. Hammocks, those are very affordable. Fire pits, with Adirondack chairs are super affordable. Making it pet friendly and doing the pet friendly amenities, like we talked about earlier, that's
Yeah,
super affordable. And it surprises me how many people don't have like a coffee bar or like even like a liquor bar setup, with like drink mixing and pretty cups and glasses and creating those little stations just add
yeah,
to the overall feel in the photos of like, oh wow, like I could visualize myself there like making my coffee and sitting out and looking at the beach in the morning or sitting by the pool and or I could see us being able to make drinks and have cocktails and watch the sunset. There it adds a lot to the person's perception when they're looking at it to book. So those are all really inexpensive things that you can add to the property.
yeah. Those are great. Kind of touched on those from the outside. Some things I think about from the inside perspective, and I typically, think about these things either the guest experience, what they're going to experience while they're on property, or even from the marketing to the guests from upfront, just to get people to book. And so a lot of times that's going to be your pictures. So one, evaluate your pictures. If they're not good, and maybe you did them yourself, or like when I got started, there was some residential normal photographers. We paid $200 and got pictures. Okay, now we've gone back and we've upgraded and got better pictures. But on top of that is look at those spaces like you talked about with the coffee bar or some other areas that you can build out. But even look at your bedrooms. Um, for $400 or $500, you can get nice wallpaper behind the headboard of your bed. And think about that picture that you're taking of your bedrooms. It's looking at the headboard and the wall. So guess you're either going to see this blank white wall behind your headboard that has probably like white sheets and a white duvet on it. So it's going to look very plain and muted and not stand out. Or, we're in beach markets, or they can see these palm fronds and beachscapes, whatever, right? Now you're drawing those people's attention to it. And just visually, it just changes the way that they perceive your property. That now it looks fun, it looks exciting, looks like you have thought about the guest as opposed to kind of just having this a blank canvas. So those are some little things that I recommend for my clients, and things that I look at as well, is just like, where can we add these pops of color, whether it's wallpaper, some other type of material, just to break up the plainness of a. I love white. My home, if I showed you around, we have all white walls. We touch it up with pops of greenery and natural colors. So I love white walls, but for vacation rentals, you have to get some pops of color in there to get the guest
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah, and people wanna stay in a property that's totally different than their own home.
Yeah, exactly.
They wanna go to a place that's, like, more bold and, fun, because they would probably never do that in their own home, so it's definitely that's a great tip. I love that. That peel and stick wallpaper, doing that super easy. Okay, so Rich, let's talk about where we're like August 28th right now, and I
Yep.
don't know about you, but I'm trying to buy as many properties as I can before the end of the year. And our clients are too, because now we have 100%
Right.
bonus depreciation. And, we've got to get ourselves positioned and set up and ready to launch and have two stays under 7 days before December 31st. So, what are you thinking, like timing? You think it's a good time for people to get under contract? Like, what are you feeling right now for that?
Yeah. Yeah, you touched on it. A lot of buyers right now are thinking about taking advantage of the tax benefits, and you touched on it, getting it live, getting two stays by the end of the year. So that's definitely driving it. And you know, I think Nikki, you and I probably were both back prior to the big beautiful bill in March, June. I guess March, April, May, June, leading up to it, when kind of this talk started happening. We're like, hey, don't wait, because as soon as it is official, now everybody else is going to know that it's official. They're going to be buying, and I've definitely seen that. It sounds like you've seen that, but there's a lot of buyers right now. And then think about it from the rate perspective. That rumor is out there now that we're going to start seeing rate drops, maybe in September, maybe this fall, maybe this winter, maybe in early 2026, right? But what's going to
Yeah.
happen as soon as that happens? There's going to be
Competition.
thousands of more buyers coming in, right? And so what
Yeah.
that means is that you're paying more for the house to save half a percent or a percent, and your price is not the your monthly payment's going to be about the same as it would have been anyway. So I'd say don't act now just to buy, but now is the time. If you find that property that cash flows, where the numbers work, now's the time. um,
Yeah.
because it is
I
going to take it's going to take a little bit, like we talked about. Like, nothing's truly turnkey where you buy it and then you start hosting guests the next week, right? It's going to take
Right.
something, either paint, new pictures, maybe some the fire pit and the string lights, some minor things that have a big impact, but that's going to take a little bit of time. So let's not wait until November, because we're going to get those calls probably on
We are.
Thanksgiving. So we get back from Thanksgiving, like, hey, I need to buy something and get it live by the end of the year. It's like, I'm sure we're all going to do our best to try to find that property for them, but we
Yeah.
should have been having this conversation 2 months ago. So don't wait. We
Yeah.
probably
I
have
would say
about.
right now
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say right now, what I'm doing personally is I'm meeting with the CPA right now and saying, okay, this is what my year has looked like.
Yeah,
What do I need to do before the end of the year to keep my tax liability as low as possible? And, not that it's all about taxes, but when you
right.
are making high income, you have to really be strategic about that if you want to keep as much money in your pocket at the end of the day. I mean, some people, I think the old me didn't really have the mental capacity to deal with that kind of stuff sometimes, to be honest. So I
Hmm.
understand, like, life just had me in a place where I didn't even want to look at those things. But now I get so excited to meet with the CPA and talk about these things and understand truly, like, what do I need to do? Your shift as you start to build your wealth, your time has to go more into tax planning. And so meet with your CPA, figure out the plan in the next week, like make it a priority, like text them right now, call them right now, email them right now to get that time to say, okay,
Yeah.
what is my tax liability looking like? And then we can go and make a plan, and we'll know like how big of a property you need to buy to really offset that, if that's a big goal for you. And of course, still make sure that it makes sense from a cash flow perspective and an
Hmm.
equity and appreciation. Um, but it's definitely time. Like you think about August 28th. Let's say we write you an offer next week. You're closing first week of October. If you're using a loan, most people are leveraging debt. And then you've got October to get it set up and ready, launching the first week of November. That positions you well. So we're really kind of like, you've got about 30 to 45 days realistically right now to get this all done.
Yep.
If you need it live and operating before the end of the year, right? So that's, yeah, I would say definitely like just start making those calls and taking action. It's totally possible. We've got deals. One thing about the Savvy team, if you are a VIP client, you have a signed buyer's agreement and you're working with us on the team, and you can work with Rich and me at the same time. We share clients right now, me and Rich do.
Yep.
So you can absolutely work with people, multiple agents in different markets, right? You do have to have a signed agreement with them before, at least for us, legally you're supposed to, but for us, we're not going to send you deals, until we have that, right? Legally, we really can't do real estate for you until we do. So, having that signed, we have deals ready now. Like, actually, I was just talking to one of my clients. He's under contract on one property. He's like, Nikki, I'm doing another 1031. I need to find 2 more properties. I'm like, all right, here you go. Here's all the deals. I've got it. Here's the list. Like, take your pick, right?
Yep.
Because I already have those ready to go. I already know what needs to be done. I've already probably pre-toured most of them. I understand what it's going to take, to get it live and running. And as far as like how much in you got to go as far as cash, like we've got that ready for you. So it's really just a matter of you taking that action. And also just note on the buyer's agreement, you can cancel anytime. You just let us know.
Yeah.
You're not. And also note too, a lot of questions I get about this are the sellers are still paying our commissions. So it's 99% of the time the sellers are paying my full commission. And we're negotiating that for you. So you're really not at a loss for anything to get a buyer's agreement signed so that you can really start getting our hand-picked deals fed to you, and running pro formas and reviewing scope of works and making plans and making moves. So I just wanted to note that.
Yeah. So it sounds like we still have time. If someone's still thinking about making that purchase this year, there's still time, but let's not wait to start this process in November. Let's say maybe, what do you want to call it? Like October 1st? We'll call that'll be their deadline. Let's get you under contract in October. So you close in November and get you live in December. But that's going to be probably
Yeah.
about the quickest turnaround you're going to have. So I think to get that process started for everyone, you see our contact information scrolling across the bottom. So feel free to reach out to myself, to Nikki. If you're looking in other markets and you don't know where to start, shoot either one of us a message. You can go to the Savvy Facebook group, but we have a great team and kind of our hub office that can help connect you with the market that makes the most sense for you based on your goals. They're really good about helping navigate that and getting you connected to the right Savvy team member. So definitely reach out to them. So really appreciate everyone joining this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy the weekend. Nikki, really enjoyed hanging out with you and talking short-term
Me
rentals,
too.
and look forward to doing it again.
Yes. Thank you guys. Have a great Labor Day
All right.
weekend. Bye.